You're watching Force 13's live streaming service. Hello and welcome to Force 13 Live. Hurricane Erin is strengthening again and is continuing to sidle further west than expectations. The storm is getting fairly close now to the Turks and Caicos Islands and also the Bahamas, where a tropical storm warning is in effect and has been in effect since yesterday evening. Erin is stronger. It's much larger. The eye is trying to open out again, although there are several weaknesses appearing on that satellite image, on the various satellite images that we're looking at. So perhaps it's not going to be a foregone conclusion that the storm will continue intensifying, but it is already quite formidable and much larger than where it was at its first peak. 2 recon planes are currently in the storm. And not long ago, they got they got flight level winds of around 130 to maybe a little bit higher, 130 knots. And that probably translates to 140 miles per hour on the ground, which is what we've gone with at our live update here. Pressure estimate 933 millibars from an earlier drop sonde that they captured. Although I believe that they may have actually got a slightly higher pressure in a more recent pass, but we're waiting for confirmation. In fact, there was a drop sonde, let's just check, 938 millibars at 5 knots. So actually, the pressure may have gone up just a tad since an earlier flight that we were looking at. What you're looking at on the screen there is imagery from our automated stream, which is running at the same time. I should point out that there was a problem with my machine again, like there is every day, and that means that the automated stream cannot really update anymore until I get a new template in place, which will probably take the rest of today. However, the imagery on the automated stream there is still updating on its own, so at least we've got something over there. What we can also show you as well on today's stream is a few viewpoints. There's a couple of places that are relatively close to the storm, such as Providenciales, which is on the Turks and Caicos Islands. You can see someone really pleased about being out there. There is a tropical storm warning at this location, so I don't think that is the wisest thing to be doing. And here's another viewpoint from the same area, looking out straight into Hurricane Erin in the distance there. A live shot there from the Turks and Caicos Islands, looking out towards Hurricane Erin. They'll probably be receiving tropical storm force winds at times on the Turks and Caicos Islands. You can certainly see it is blowing about quite a lot at this point, with a few heavy storms out there in the distance. You can see one such example there. So that's a few viewpoints that we're looking at as well on our stream today, as well as the satellite imagery. And here it is right now, showing that the storm is continuing to look impressive once again. A Category 4 quite distinctively or definitively, and still a little bit sloppy though at times in those bands, and quite a few weaknesses appearing. Well, my name is Nathan Foy here in the studio once again. We're here for another hour-long live event to talk about Erin, and you will notice here that it is moving still pretty much just north of due west, which is pretty incredible. If that continues, quite honestly, I feel like they should be putting out a hurricane watch for some of the Bahamas, the central Bahamas maybe, at this point, because it is getting rather close. I'm joined by Declan, Jack, and JJ with us right now. Let's first talk to JJ. You're the closest to the storm technically, although you're not that close to the storm at all. However, you're probably looking at this with one eye open up there in New York, as the storm is expected to Well, not get that close still at this juncture, but the cone is shifting.
Yeah, throughout the day yesterday, I was noticed the cone shifting a little bit further to the west, and it did draw my attention because, like you mentioned earlier, it's bringing tropical storm impacts potentially throughout the day today to some of the western Turks and Caicos. And if this continues, then we're probably going to see some tropical storm impacts on the on some of the westernmost Bahamas and potentially even hurricane force wind gust, which is something to keep in mind as the storm continues its path further north. Um, I'm still not convinced that this shift further west is something to keep in serious mind for at least in my case up here in New York. But
Yeah.
um, for the sake for the sake of rip currents and swells, it's definitely gonna make the situation a little bit further worse. Gonna see some stronger swells, a lot worse with currents. So just not gonna go to the beach.
Sorry, I was talking to myself just for a second there. These are the wind probability charts now, and I just want to caution that the National Hurricane Center put out a message the other day saying that those wind probabilities may be underestimated. What we're looking at here, the edge, the very edge there is 5%, then the next shade of green inwards there is 10%. So some of the outer banks of North Carolina there, 10 to 20% chance of tropical storm force winds, as is many of the Bahamas, although some of them much higher than that. So certainly could be looking at a tropical storm watch or warning for part of the United States, and still Bermuda on the other side there as well. Well, the good news for them is that those chances have decreased with these westward motions. They're still at about a 17-18% chance of tropical storm force winds. Jack, your thoughts on Erin this morning, its appearance? Are you surprised, or are you pretty much expected that it would look a bit like this today?
I did expect it to look sort of like this today, but I wasn't expecting the more pronounced western shift. And I could start with the current facts, because Erin's re-intensified to a Category 4 hurricane. I think we've got it 130 miles an hour sustained.
Yep.
Is it? Yeah, and that's following an aerial replacement cycle, so it's probably going to intensify a little bit further. Um, and I think the NHC also expects possible further strengthening. And I think even without a landfall, Erin still poses substantial threats to the US East Coast. Like, depending on how long it takes for it to turn up north, might be the anchor point on this storm, and what will happen with the storm um, in in the week coming is how long it takes for it to turn.
This is just about the highest resolution and imagery enhancement that we can get on the eye of the storm right now. Tell you what, it looks like it's got a problem. Southern side
Yeah,
sucking in a lot of that cloud there, looking very frail on that southern side. And from what we saw on Recon, the pressure is rising, and I actually wonder here whether this eye might be on the brink of another collapse here.
I mean, it certainly could be, but then that just means that the eye. Well, if it goes through
Well, it
another
just
aerial
means it's going to get
replacement
even
cycle,
bigger and even sloppier, yeah.
yeah.
Two recon planes are in there right now. Let's take a look at some of their observations. So AF304 are currently in the storm. This is what they got earlier. You can see they didn't have a pressure on their readings, but they do have the flight level winds, and that's the highest that they've gotten since Erin's first peak. We're now getting just over 130 knot flight level winds, and that I think was on which side? That was on the eastern side. as the storm headed out there, out towards the east. Then it's turned northwards the plain, and they might be going in for a northeastern pass right now, and that can be interesting to see what they managed to find there. Then they did some drop-ons, and this is quite important. No, not that one, but that is not the right, that is not responding at all. Oh, there we go, we finally got it. Drop 11. There was an earlier drop sond which supported the 933 millibars that the National Hurricane Center went with at their advisory. They got 935, I think, with a significant wind. But now the more recent drops on there, 5 knots at 938 millibars. So it would appear that the storm has weakened a little bit. That's at least 937 in reality. Very warm, by the way, at the surface there, 27.2 degrees. And then let's just check the eastern eye wall. Yeah, some pretty strong winds there. Even those are instantaneous winds, but at the surface they're 121 knots. A little bit higher further up, but that's interesting. And then we've got NOAA 2. They're also in and about the storm right now. They've already done a couple of passes, and they were circling around the eye for quite a lot. That's why this chart will look a little bit weird. The northwestern panel is usually the most interesting one to look at. Those flight level winds, again, they got up to possibly nearly 135 knots earlier, about 2 hours ago. No, 1 hour ago. And then you see loads of other big peaks and trots there. That's just because the plane was all around the eye and the winds were all over the place, because at times they just about got back into the eye wall and back out into the eye. So don't read too much into that. All you really need to read into there is either side, those two biggest peaks, one on the left and on the right, showing the actual definitive eye wall readings, and still not completely well balanced either. So there are signs that this storm may not be fully in harmony with itself at this point. However, still looking very beastly indeed, with storm force winds likely occurring on the Turks and Caicos. We can take your comments and questions live as well. I believe that fella's still there. He's really enjoying himself. Oh no, he's gone now. There's an updated image. Providenciales on the coast of the Turks and Caicos. Again, looking in towards the storm. Might be interesting to see if there's any indicators of storm surge here as well. But certainly, I would imagine dangerous sea conditions at this area. Declan, your thoughts on Erin today?
I think I've been watching the storm, and it was struggling last night to go through an eye wall replacement to get. Guys, obviously, because last night it was struggling a little bit, and obviously now it's intensifying a little bit. But yeah, but it's sloppy as hell. It looks sloppy, and I think it's probably going to have the eye close up again, because that eye looks not good. But I think it is moving a lot further west, so that Turks and Caicos could get some tropical storm, maybe even hurricane force winds, and the Bahamas potentially as well.
Now at this point, I'm sure we'll be looking very closely towards any kind of wobble that we're going to see on the track of this. The models are pretty dead sure, and have been for a while, and so the National Hurricane Center, this turn to the northwest is going to happen pretty much immediately. Pretty much all ensembles for the GFS as well, as 21 of them, pretty much calling for the storm to turn on a dime right now and head up and not seriously impact these islands. So when you've got all that to consider, you would think that the storm is going to turn shortly, but could all of those models and insights be defied? That is something we're going to... I tell you what we probably should do is see if there's any models at all that actually call for a storm continuing westward, even for just a few hours here, because I'm looking at, you know, the most aggressive models usually, like the HFSA. It's calling for the storm to be moving northwest straight away and not even getting any 50 knot winds on any land areas, which is quite fascinating actually. I'm just trying to think what, I mean, Icon was a scary model at one point as well, and it is still calling for the storm to have a second peak of 908 millibars. I can show you this too. 908 millibars still on the Icon model from this morning, but even that one, okay, no, a little bit more of a wobble, and then it turns in earnest this afternoon local time, and then it starts to shoot up a little bit further. Storm force winds maybe getting towards strong storm force winds for the Outer Banks, and then out it goes. Could you imagine if it actually was 916 in that location? Well, that is what the Icon is forecasting.
That would be the first North Category 5 in the Atlantic's history.
With a pressure like that at that latitude, it may not even be a 5 though.
True.
There's the HWRF again recurving very quickly, almost immediately. Well, actually, no. There, that's the turning point again. That's around now though. That is around the current time. HMON.
That's going to happen now.
What's that?
It doesn't look like it's going to happen now.
HMON a little bit more of a west-northwesterly, and then turning. Again, pretty much every model here, hurricane force winds avoid land. So that is something. And then let's try HAFSB. That's pretty much an immediate turn. Some of those models reckon that the storm was pretty much already peaked, which is interesting. HAFSB there doesn't get the storm much stronger than it currently is. Certainly in terms of winds. Well, no, there's a point. There's a point there this evening where it gets to 145 miles an hour and then weakens again. Checking back with global, obviously GFS. Well, there's actually a new run. No, that's just because we're looking at the close-up view. Just a second. If we look back at the GFS there, again, it calling for that turn to happen immediately. And then blowing up in pressure again. Probably still a Category 4 there, rounding that corner. And off it goes again. And that second system, which is also quite interesting there. A much smaller system that really blows up near the Outer Banks again. But that is in the longer range. Let's see, we've got some more imagery to look at right now. Here's a close-up of the tops, the cloud top imagery of Erin. Still can't quite figure out what's going on here. Well, there's a big gap there on that southwestern side, so that's an immediate problem there for Erin. However, the eye itself is still getting a little bit more clear. So it's going to be fascinating to watch what happens in the next 12 hours as to whether the eye manages to clear itself out. But certainly to me looks like there's a substantial weakness there now in that southwestern quadrant. I don't... did Recon sample that? I've actually lost the Recon data now. What was that?
Hold on a minute.
Just to give you an update on them, AF304 are about to fly in northeast to southwest, so that's going to be an interesting one that we want to see. They haven't really done southwest whilst it's been looking like this, so that AF304 is going to be one that may provide some valuable data. Let's go back to another one of those cameras right now from the Turks and Caicos, showing that the wobbling quite a lot. Let's see if we can take some of your comments and questions right now. Start your message with Force 13 all in text. Will Erin have a major impact on Bermuda? It would seem relatively unlikely at this point, but probably going to get some storm force winds, although even those chances have been failing a little bit. And is this kind of a coincidence that Erin experienced Dean's intensification and Dorian's intensification at some point where Erin was active? I think I know what you're trying to say, but I'm not sure. I mean, those are completely different things.
It's looking like it is going to start turning more to the north, actually.
Well, we certainly hope so. Here's another close-up of Erin right now. Really lovely imagery. Really shows you exactly what's going on in there.
Oh, well done.
That's just going back in the animation to this morning, and this is how it has been progressing. If you compare it to here or here, looked like it was coming back real strong at this point, but now it just looks like we've got significant weakness here. Even this area doesn't look great. Maybe there. It is not. It's got a few issues to deal with right now. And like we were looking at on the super close-up visible earlier, it will appear in a second on top of the automated overlay there. There it is. Up to the minute imagery here from GOES 19 Rapid Scan. And from a visible perspective, still looks very much a westerly movement, although it is difficult to get a handle on exactly where the center of the eye is throughout all of this, and it does swing around a lot. What are our second peak intensity measurements? Well, it hasn't reached its second peak yet, we don't think. I would expect at least 145 miles per hour second peak. But models aren't really sure if it's going to get much stronger or if it will. And why is the eye failing to close? I do wonder whether it might have been some of that dry air that had chugged along with it when it was crossing the Atlantic. Saharan dust spread all over the place. That may be an issue. I don't know if it is that. It's not. I don't think it's wind shear at the minute. After it becomes subtropical, will it be heading for C. Marty in the UK? I would say unlikely at the minute. It's more likely to get thrown up northwards near Greenland.
And Iceland.
What's that?
Greenland and Iceland.
Yeah, a lot of them do end up heading up towards that way in the end. Just got a bit more data from AF304, although it looks like there's been a couple of gaps in coverage, but they are still heading in on the northeastern side. Nothing really interesting in the data. Not heard from NOAA 2 for a little while either, so I don't know what their plans are. Also, I'd like to point out that we are expecting to do our own little mock-up of a recon flight later on today on the Extra channel at around about 11 a.m. Eastern time, if that kind of thing interests you. We're doing flight sim into the storm to see if it's anything like what it is in real life. Sometimes the simulator makes it well, other times it doesn't. So tune in with us on that one as well, and we'll obviously have a little chatter about how the storm's performing at that point as well. And of course we've got more regular updates. I don't know what our plan is for tonight, whether it will be a bulletin or not, but as of right now, we're just continuing to watch it here. Let's read out the last National Hurricane Center advisory just to get everyone on the same page. So on their update at 8 a.m., they had 130 miles per hour and a pressure of 933 millibars. We think it now might be a little bit stronger than that. And a tropical storm warning is in effect for the Turks and Caicos Islands and for the southeast Bahamas. So that extends as far up as Crooked Island there. And a tropical storm watch in effect for the central Bahamas, which takes us up a little bit further. I can't remember which islands those are. Long Key included in there, I'm pretty sure. and not quite as far as Eleuthera Island. It's the one below that, which name escapes me. Cat Island is actually the one. So that's how far the tropical storm watch extends, to Cat Island in the Bahamas, and we expect that those watches and warnings will be extended at some point later. Gradual turn to the north expected later today and on Tuesday. Expected to pass to the east of the southeastern Bahamas today and move between Bermuda and the east coast of the US by the middle of the week. Some additional strengthening expected today. Will remain a dangerous hurricane right through the middle of this week. Hurricane force winds extend outwards up to 80 miles from the center, and tropical storm force winds up to 230 miles. So that is definitely an increasing number right there. Rainfall, in fact, let's just switch to... is this still up to date? Yes, this graphic is up to date there, rainfall forecast. So the outer bands will produce localized areas of heavy rainfall across portions of Hispaniola through today and through Tuesday for the Turks and Caicos and portions of the southeast and central Bahamas. Additional rainfall of 2 to 4 inches with locally higher amounts to 6 inches are forecast. Tropical storm conditions expected today across the Turks and Caicos Islands and the southeast Bahamas. Tropical storm conditions possible in portions of the central Bahamas late today through Tuesday. Swells generated by Erin will affect the Bahamas, Bermuda, the east coast of the US and Atlantic Canada during the next several days. These rough ocean conditions will likely cause life-threatening surf and rip currents. And minor coastal flooding possible in areas of onshore winds in the Turks and Caicos Islands and the southeast Bahamas. Near the coast, the surge will be accompanied by large waves, which we've seen a little bit of on those webcams. Let me just have a look at what... well, their last forecast discussion was at 5 a.m. They reported back then that they may have had concentric eye walls. But they didn't really say what was causing the issues, the potential issues here. But what has happened is that the ridging has been stronger than expected, clearly, because that's why the storm has been shepherded further towards the west. And at some point, any time now, that ridge is going to break down and the storm will be let through towards the north there. NOAA 2 have just passed, or are passing, just about to reach the eye, actually. They've just caught a couple of wind reports of about 105 knots, just about to enter the eye. So we'll keep you up to date on NOAA 2's progress. And they're doing southwest to northeast, so actually, that's 105 knots on that southwest side. So even though it may look a little bit flaky, they're still getting some pretty strong winds in there, probably going to correlate to a Category 3 in that side by the time we get all the data. And then Category 4 winds we would expect on the east and northeastern side. Open the floor to my team right now. I don't know if you've got any comments or insight into why we think Erin is struggling a little bit. Is it itself preventing its strengthening?
It does happen after storms undergo an eye wall replacement cycle. Sometimes it's tough for them to recover, and they might need to do it again. And that might also happen with Erin.
Quite possible. Yeah, visible not yielding the prettiest pictures of Erin right now, it has to be said. Nonetheless, let me get you another. I like throwing up as many different viewpoints as possible. Yeah.
I like the blue marble imagery of Erin. Looks quite pleasant.
It does. I will go and fetch some of that in a second as well. But you're right.
Yeah.
Here's another still frame of how the storm has been looking just very recently on Visible. It still looks quite good actually from that perspective. But that is Erin as we see it right now. Just give you an update on its current position. It's approximately 22, round up to 23.0 north, 70.7 degrees west now. That puts it approximately 158 kilometers from Middle Caicos Island. It's about 167 from North Caicos and 158 from East Caicos. It's around 205 kilometers from Providenciales, where those webcams are, and Grace Bay, very popular touristy areas there. Let's take another look at some of these cameras right now. This is on Providenciales, looking towards the storm, slightly sheltered by the other islands of the Turks and Caicos, especially as the storm is on the approaching side. So that camera's getting pretty fogged up now. Here's another viewpoint again, looking out, very narrow angle looking in there, which always looks a little bit moodier. And then we've got this viewpoint, which is looking pretty cloudy there. A couple of people still out as well. Don't forget, a tropical storm warning is in effect in this location, and at times they will receive those winds up to 40 miles per hour and above. Might also be interesting to show you some microwave imagery from this morning as well. This was a partial pass, albeit, but looking quite impressive on that microwave imagery, and also potentially agreeing with maybe a little bit of concentric eye wall action there. I'm not sure if that is an eye wall or a band, but certainly the inner eye wall looking pretty decent. Already showing a little bit of that weakness on that southwestern side as well, so certainly seems to be a recurring theme, but overall looking pretty good on that microwave from earlier, around about 3 hours ago this image was. And now back to how it currently looks. That weakness shifting gradually along the southern side, and then will be thrown out towards the east a little bit later. That microwave imagery was from RAM. I have no idea what drama's going on in the comments, but we're not really going to get into that. Will they pass through the weaker side is another question there. Well, they just have. They did go through the southwestern side. That was NOAA 2. And they are expecting, well, what I saw there, 105 knot winds at least. They haven't got all the data from that pass just yet, so it may have been a little bit higher. That was obviously flight level. And we've also got AF304, so they're going to meet in the eye probably, or very close to each other, because that AF304 is just about to enter the eye. They've just grabbed a few 105 knot winds on the northeastern side. Again, they didn't get to the strongest part of the eye wall yet either, so we're just waiting for next fixes on both of those planes, which are both going to be rather interesting. Let's throw it back to some of our other imageries right now. The Zaire imagery, which is always one of my favorites, showing off that big red ring all the way around almost. Well, it is if you go out far enough, but the closest area to the eye there, the inner eye wall. Again, southern side a bit weak. Might be preventing the storm from intensifying further than what it currently is doing, but also those latest couple of frames might be seeing the beginning of that northwesterly turn.
That's what I was thinking as well when I was having a closer look at the storm as well.
Yeah.
And the real Earth imagery is quite useful as well, but it doesn't actually look as much so like it is going to start turning to the north.
Yep, there's another view of the storm right now as well. Oh, we were going to show some other imagery, weren't we? The blue marble imagery, which is one of the enhancements on the Forster Team website as well, that you can take a look at if you go into the regional satellite imagery compilations. They've got blue marble visible imagery on tap. Let me just see which one would look the best. Probably the Caribbean viewer.
Yeah, the Caribbean one is the one that I was looking at. It does look very nice.
Yeah, we'll get this to air in just a second, but yeah, here we are. So blue marble imagery from the Force 13 website as well, really looking quite pretty on this particular enhancement too. So also gives you a little bit more perspective on how large this storm is. It's still not huge, but certainly the eye's growing. In fact, how wide even is that eye at this point? That's a good question. It's a very ragged eye now. Approximately 55 kilometers wide, which is about... I've gone blank on that actually. I think it's about 35 miles. A little bit less than that.
I can quickly go ahead and run a check.
It's about 35 miles wide. Moving west-northwesterly, I would say, on those latest frames. But anytime now, that turn towards the northwest should be occurring. But we know how wrong models can be sometimes. But this is a bit different with every model and every ensemble calling for the storm to pass northwards very soon and to start that turn pretty much immediately. At the very latest by early afternoon local time, and then the next phase of that recurvature. So if you've not seen the forecast yet this morning, this is what they're now saying. It's not ever so different to what it was in previous days, but obviously the storm has ended up further west than expected, and tropical storm force winds are likely on all of those islands that are under the tropical storm warning, and it could spread further into the Bahamas. Let's go back to one of those cameras in Providenciales, which is part of the Turks and Caicos Islands, and it's gotten very dull. And I believe Jack's got something to show us as well now too.
Some imagery. It's going a bit
Through real Earth there.
through real Earth. Yeah.
I did see what you did with the imagery. It was looking quite trippy.
It was looking quite trippy.
Well, there it is now. Again, a few more visual enhancements there.
Oh wow! Oops.
You started drawing, Jack.
I didn't mean to.
But whilst we're at a little bit of a lull waiting for more recon data, I do want to point out something else that's going on in the world right now. We have the Western Pacific, which has thrown up two areas of interest here. The one on the left-hand side, a very broad, disorganized system. Not convinced it's got a center of circulation yet, and I don't think I can be convinced by radar either. However, the JTWC have gone and called it 17W, so they've tagged it. I assume as a tropical depression. I don't actually know. Let me just double check that. Yeah.
I think Vietnam also have tagged it as well.
So they've called it a tropical depression, that thing on the left, just about moving into Vietnam. And on the right-hand side, that's supposed to be another area of interest there as well, but it looks shocking, really. It does have a circulation, though, confirmed by ASCAT earlier today, with 40-mile-per-hour winds. However, the convective pattern is completely wrong. JMA have declared it a tropical depression, and so have Pegasa, and they named it, was it Huaning? And it is now moving northwards, likely to move over or very near to Okinawa, could become a tropical storm as it does so, and enter the East China Sea. And then it's got a crossroads as to which way to turn there, because models have been flip-flopping really dramatically from eastern China landfall to the coast of Japan. But that's just a little look at what's happening elsewhere. Not too much, it has to be said. Western Pacific has been on the quiet side so far this year, despite those 1 or 2 strong storms that we've seen. Back to the latest on Erin, and there's its motion throughout the course of this morning. It's been more westerly than we were expecting, and that means that the storm has dragged itself closer to impacting these islands, which it will be doing for the Turks and Caicos, especially right now. Storm conditions likely, heavy rainfall up to 4 inches with isolated maximums of 6. The recurvature is expected at any time, and we are seeing early signs that that might now be occurring. Let's just take a look at this COD imagery once again. Lots of different websites providing imagery, and it may be looking like the eye is starting to get clouded over a little bit more again, so we may be losing some progress with this storm's intensity, which is obviously good news. Southern side still looking the flakiest. Waiting for that recon pass, or double recon pass. 2 planes in there right now. Yes, NOAA 2 have just flown through the centre. They got extrapolated 935.7, so still very much in the same ballpark as it has been for the whole morning. And they're now into the northeastern side, just about getting some winds of about 120 knot flight level. So that's gone down a little bit if that's the highest they're going to get, but they may still get a little bit higher as they continue on through. So that's the latest from NOAA 2, and we're just waiting for any news from AF304, which should be following very shortly. They'll have also gone through the eye in the opposite direction at the very same time. Can be a risky business that, but I assume they're flying at different altitudes. NOAA 2 flew into the eye at about 2,200 meters, and AF304 is about 1,000 meters higher. About 500 meters higher actually. About what is that in feet? About 1,500 feet separation between them there as they were flying through the eye by the sounds of things. So we'll wait for more data from AF304, which should be arriving at any moment. Water vapor imagery there as well. Just showing so many fractures there on that southern side. And where does Erin go from here? What it will mean if we're seeing a series of eye wall replacement cycles is that the ballooning of the storm's wind distribution is going to get more pronounced, and what we might see is the storm gradually getting maybe a little bit weaker later on, and the winds spreading out. So basically when you're trying to flatten anything that's got like a peak in it, I'm trying to think of some analogy here, but what will eventually happen is when you push it down is it's going to get distributed a little bit more widely over a wider area with less of a peak, and that's generally the case of what's going to be happening with Erin. It won't be as strong, but it will be much wider. Weather Crazy says, when do we think it will shift north? Well, it looks like that's going to be happening soon, but we're not sure if it's actually happening yet. Is the eye collapsing? I think that is a potential risk here, that the eye might be collapsing. Whether it will fully collapse is a big question mark, when it may just be fractured eye walls that are going to be consistently competing with each other and trying to develop. Obviously the conditions for the storm are good, so it may well be its own worst enemy. And why do hurricanes go more poleward as they strengthen? Well, it's the Coriolis effect, of course. And the only thing that stops storms doing that in the first place is because of the high pressure ridges. We have generally strong ridges over the Atlantic in the summertime, the Bermuda Azores high, and that is really digging in at this point, preventing this storm from making the turn. However, there is also that little system that the National Hurricane Center had the other day at 10%. They must have got rid of it by now. Yeah. You see just to the north there, though, a little bit of cloud approaching Bermuda. And that is what's left of that disturbance. That's another little low pressure there, weak point, which is definitely going to be felt by Erin, we would think, for it to get sucked up towards it eventually. You can also see on that National Hurricane Center tropical weather outlook that they have got a area of interest out in the eastern Atlantic there. They've got near 0% chance for the next 5 days, for the next 2 days. And in the next 7 days, they do have it at 50%, actually, according to their 8 a.m. advisory. And that could be another one that will go on and affect the Lesser Antilles. And this could be a more direct impact this time around. So regardless of what Erin didn't do for those islands, I think the next system will pack more of a punch. Now, I'm not saying it's going to be a Category 5 overland, but considering that they barely got winds on those islands from Erin, I think they could at least get some storm force winds from this next system. I don't know if anyone's got any thoughts about that next system.
To be fair, I think it's too far out to see what it will do. But if it does form, the Leeward Islands would have to keep an eye on the system, whether it goes further north or whether it just carries on moving into the Caribbean. It's uncertainty at the moment how strong it's going to get or if it's going to form, because there's still a lot of dry air in the MDR right now from Erin, so that could hinder some development for this system. But I wouldn't be surprised in the long term that it does become a name storm. But
Yep.
We have to keep an eye out for this system, because anything could happen, because it is August at the end of the day, and August is prime time month for the Atlantic to get going and firing up convection. So
Well,
have to keep an
obviously,
eye
I
on it.
mean, we've just seen it evidently with Erin, so there's going to be more coming up, I'm very sure.
Yep.
Don't know why the automated stream was stuck on the hourly viewpoint there, but we'll be throwing you back to the automated stream in about 10 minutes time when we finish our update here. It's got all the latest imagery and updates when we're not on the air. NOAA 2 did go through the storm again, and they've turned around in the northeastern quadrant. They've just done a 180, but they went through the eye just before. Yeah, that's the one we actually reported on already. They got winds, nearly 120 knot flight level winds there after they got through the eye. It's AF304 that we've just got data for, that they've just gone through the eye as well, and they caught quite similar winds there in that northeastern quadrant where you would expect that, about 120 knot flight level winds, so not as strong as it was earlier in that quadrant. Whether those winds have shifted around somewhere else, I'm not sure, but it sounds like we may be seeing a halt in this storm's intensification at the very least, and maybe a little bit of a faltering, but we'll have to wait for a little bit more data to confirm. I'd like to see the northwestern side again. AF304 just about to hit the southwestern side, which is also interesting because that's looking like the weak side. But NOAA 2 turning round while still getting hurricane force winds to fly right back in there again, so that's quite interesting. And apart from that, not too much else to say at this second. So let's throw back to some of the live viewpoints again. Back in the Turks and Caicos Islands, Providenciales, looking out towards the storm. You can see it's quite breezy, waves crashing in. It's not going to get too crazy here, but it is a tropical storm warning, so take precautions. Again, there's that other viewpoint looking out. And finally, the third viewpoint that we've got here, again, looking towards Hurricane Erin on that north shore. At least I assume it is. I believe they are. Still looking quite pretty, it has to be said. But very breezy, if not windy. Okay, so do we know what caused Lenny and Omar to move left to right? Well, that was a completely different time of year. Certainly, well, yeah, for both of them, actually. That's when you get those different patterns where you can sometimes, on the odd occasion, get those Caribbean systems that can form over there, and that they try and get sucked out towards the northeast, usually by frontal energy. Pulling them in that direction, or weak steering currents in general. So it's not common, but sometimes you can get situations where those storms are going the wrong way. It's much more likely, though, when you get those later season storms that they form further to the west in the Caribbean, and then they zip up northwards or hit Central America, or obviously enter the Gulf. Let's see what else we've got right now. Apparently wind shear 10 to 15 knots southerly and 10 to 15 knots northerly at low and upper level, 25 to 30 knots wind shear by the 20th, wind shear decreased to 10 to 15 knots with third peak. I'll take your word for that. I don't think wind shear's a major issue for this storm right now. It's the storm's own structure, maybe some dry air entrainment, not sure about that. Interesting potential point because of all the dry air it brought along with it from Africa, although when we look at this wide shot you can't really see much of that Saharan dust anymore. You can see quite a few areas over the central Atlantic, but not really affecting Erin. Although it is affecting that other wave that's moving out over the eastern Atlantic, and that's why it's not got much of a chance of forming in the next couple of days. And then we look back up to Erin there. Another beautiful image here with that extratropical low up there as well to the southeast of Newfoundland, which for a time looked as though it may have had a little bit of a chance of developing into something. And then you've got that third little system here, which is trying to get a circulation, it has to be said. That was the 10% that the National Hurricane Center had the other day. Let me bring us back. Go ahead.
It looks better now than what they did when they marked it.
But maybe a little bit. I'm just going to throw us towards the GFS model now as well. I know we looked at models a little bit before, but just to show you this more so that we can look at where the wind field is going. Those green areas, tropical storm force winds, so it will be at their worst for the Turks and Caicos a little bit later today. That's about 5 hours out is when it looks like the winds will be the worst in the Turks and Caicos Islands. In fact, the GFS is still insistent on tropical storm force winds missing most of the Bahamas. The only one getting affected is that small island that sticks out there, which I forget the name of. I'm not sure if that is... I don't know who that is in the background either, but that is San Salvador Island, which briefly gets storm force winds. And you'll see on the GFS there, not as strong either, but still a major hurricane. May even lose major hurricane status according to the model, which I don't think is true. And then off it goes, strengthening again to a second or maybe third peak by that point. I suppose it would be. Brief storm force winds for the Outer Banks. Almost reaching the Delmarva Peninsula as well. And as I've always got to do is try and desperately to find Bermuda, because it is so hard to see on this graphic. There it is. I bet you can't see it. Bermuda is here. So just watch for potential winds. Storm force winds for a prolonged period of time for the island of Bermuda. Starting on the 21st at approximately 8 AM. And continuing until about the 22nd at the same time. So 24 hours of storm force winds for Bermuda possibly, if the GFS model is to be believed. Look how large Erin gets in the later part of that run, though. Huge. Still a tropical hurricane there. Turning post-tropical, passing Newfoundland. Newfoundland gets some storm force winds as well. Whether it's tropical or not by then, pretty irrelevant. And then out it goes. Huge extratropical cyclone. And it loses a lot of energy just as it starts to drift a little bit further east right at the end of that run, which is the 27th of August. That is still a fair while away. And look what's behind it. Another hurricane. That's from that 0% 050 that the National Hurricane Center currently have active, which the GFS reckons might become a hurricane as it starts to recurve, and that could be another one for Canada as well. We've only got a few minutes left here, Blaine, so tell us your thoughts on Erin right now.
Right, well, firstly, good afternoon, everyone. I just tuned in.
Sure.
Let's see. Oh, Erin's definitely looking like a definitely still quite a powerful system, but not as powerful as it was when it was Category 5, obviously. But it definitely has looks a bit more compact than it was a while ago, and it is also its eye is definitely closing up quite a bit. But I think definitely we're gonna have to. It's definitely not looking like it's gonna affect like the eastern coast of the US. It's mostly probably gonna go up to, like you were just saying, Newfoundland and stuff. I think that's going to be the main concern for anyone living on the east coast of Central America. But yeah, I do think it still looks like quite a strong system, and just the best advice we can give you is, you know, pay attention to all your local weather agencies, relevant agencies, for any warnings and that type of thing that they might issue. And worst case scenario, any perhaps not like it's probably going to happen, but if there is even evacuation orders, but that will probably not happen. Anyways,
I reckon this storm is starting to struggle a little bit more, though, on latest imagery, getting even more discombobulated and fractured down the southern side. A commenter suggesting that wind shear at higher levels is preventing more convection. That may well be true. Recon pass just occurred from AF304, and they have gotten 936 millibars at 11 knots, so that is still supporting mid 930s there for the pressure, but they just flew out towards the west after they went through the eye, and only getting about 100 knot winds there on that western side. That's AF304. NOAA 2 gone straight back in for another pass as well on the northeast side, getting around 115 to 120 knot flight level winds again on the northeastern side, but still that is not incredibly high, and I do wonder whether this storm is, for intensity, stalling, but in terms of motion it's still obviously moving. Maury, a quick word from you. I know you've just joined us as well. We're just in the very last minute of this before we go back to our automated stream. Your thoughts on Erin and where it might go from here?
Yeah, so this storm is still moving west-northwest. I believe so, yeah. So that definitely will continue to be a problem for areas further west. I think that it will eventually curve towards the north, but we still have to be on high alert because I'm not so sure about that trought's positioning towards the end of its track as it reaches north. So I'm not so sure if that will move it towards the east just in time to not affect land. Of course, also, there is some short-term effects. There could be some tropical storm force winds for the Bahamas, and possibly more if it continues on this west-northwestern track. But I'm unsure if that track towards the east in the later part of its life will manage to keep it away from the eastern U.S. But I do think that there will be some curving towards the end of that cycle.
Chances are starting to increase for storm force winds for the outer banks of North Carolina. I think they may well get some tropical storm force winds, but the rest of the US still looks unlikely, although obviously really concerned about the rip current issues there and the potential for that as well. So the upshot here as we leave you on this live event at least, Erin looks like it is staying relatively strong, a Category 4 quite clearly, although there are signs of hiccups as the storm is still moving just a little bit north of west. It has continued to move west of expectations and will be affecting the Turks and Caicos Islands with tropical storm force winds today and the southeastern Bahamas. And we expect that northwesterly turn to begin in earnest very soon. We just don't know exactly when, but all models agree that it will happen in the next few hours. We may have another update tonight. I'm not sure what the schedule is just yet, but stay tuned to the channel. We'll have updates. We're doing a live mock-up recon flight into the storm now, or in an hour's time, on the extra channel. So I hope we can catch you there as well. But in the meantime, we're going to throw you back to our automated feed, which is also running on our main channel here. Thanks for watching, and hope things go well with this storm, because we don't want too much trouble. That was Hurricane